speaker, an orator, but an organizer, an activist, a mother, a woman of sublime skill who is determined to make justice a reality in this world and to use whatever means are available to her with the magnanimous gifts of the universe bestowed upon her to help lead us forward in the march toward justice. This remarkable book, State of Emergency: How We Win in the Country We Built, grows out of an extraordinary oration that I know y'all saw her give, where she put it down. And I done known her for years, and I had just chicken skin and goosebumps. And I'm like, man, she throwing it down in such a big and powerful fashion. But the passion, the intelligence behind the rhetoric is what makes a difference. So we're here to celebrate her. We're going to hear from her from time to time, but we're going to put her on the side just a little bit. You can't always put Tamika Mallory on the side. So when you get a chance to feed her and celebrate her, but we're going to draw from her wisdom. But we have this extraordinary panel. They've been introduced already. You know who they is. You know what they represent. You know who they are. And I'm honored to be here with them. So I'm going to talk to them. Then I'm going to bring Tamika in, let her throw down a little bit. You know, she be making these appearances on Grammy shows and dropping verses like she's a hip hop artist. I don't know how much she charge. I don't know how much she charge for a freestyle. So we're going to have to figure that out and see what she's up to. But a remarkable career has issued forth in this incredible book. So I want to talk to this panel about some of the issues, the ideas, the things we struggle with, how we use art to leverage our authority as social activists, how we use our status and station in life to make a commitment to something that is enduring, that is transcending the particular ideas or the particular careers or the particular commitments that we have made to something larger. How do we rescue the human family? And if you know anything about Tamika Mallory, her unapologetic commitment to Black people does not at the same time deny the legitimacy and resonance of her leadership for the broader world. Because what's good for Black folk is good for America. Indeed, is good for the world. So let me jump into conversation. You ain't here to hear me. We're going to hear from this tremendous panel. Then we're going to hear from the Reverend Dr. Professor Tamika, and now author. I mean, they say favor ain't, why God got to be? God ain't fair. I mean, God ain't fair. God ain't fair. God ain't fair. Like what she fine as she want to be. Now I'm sorry, that's my daughter. She is gorgeous as she can be. She is highly brilliant, intelligent, and articulate, and you know that. And I mean articulate in every way you can imagine. Articulate, articulate, articularly. She's got that down with the rhetorical mastery. You saw that. She's also a committed activist. She's a serious mother. She understands partnership. She loves her people. She got all them gifts and still manages to be humble at the same time. That's a beautiful thing. So I want to bring in our panel then, and I want to start with Jeannie Mai Jenkins. I got to say the whole name. You know what I'm saying? I got to hit the whole name. Newly tethered, betrothed, with nuptials for the ages, with a remarkable partner that she is. I want to start with you, Jeannie Mai, and ask you what it is about the ability to take art, to take a platform, to take a particular visibility in the world and to use that for the good of people. Not easy as it sounds, not as easy as people think, because you say things, you open your mouth, they become controversial if you're committed to truth and justice in this world. So speak to us as a woman of extraordinary achievement yourself about how that operates, how you use your fame, how you use your platform to say something to the world that needs to be heard.
Thank you. Thank you so much for moderating this, Michael.
Mhm.
For me, being an entertainer, a TV personality, a social media influencer, I have a great loyal fan base that follows me for very specific reasons. Either they like my opinion or they don't. They find it controversial on the reel, or they liked the outfit that I was wearing, so she wants to find out where my fits are from, or maybe she likes my makeup routine. You know, people follow you for very different reasons, and your social media for the average person out there now is to kind of showcase your highlight reel of what you're into, and then you just kind of pull in the people that relate to you.
Right.
So when it comes to social causes, when it comes to political standings and things like that, it's so important to me, just like art, perfect word that you said, that
Mhm.
it's genuine and that it really is something that is crafted and poignant about where it comes from within you. It's not about posting a black square. It's not about posting, you know, a quote and taking someone's, you know, artwork and just posting it to say, okay, I covered that base. It's like, what does that really
Right.
mean to you? Why is that something that's important to you? Because the same people that loved your beauty routine or loved that opinion that you shared or that story you shared about your culture, they actually also will want to know why this is important to you. And that's why anybody who has a social media following, anyone who actually signs up for a profile, you have to know that you should be responsible, because those followers, they follow you for a reason about something about you that they relate to. And it might not be a serious thing. They might just have liked what your body looks like. It might be real surface like that.
Mhm.
But you have a power the minute that they press that follow button, because now they relate to you or want to be like you in some way. You're either aspiring, or they want it, they want something of yours that you don't have, or that they don't have, or they want to learn more about it. And so whenever I post, I'm not considered a political person, but I'm sensitive around that word, because obviously politics isn't just about your political party or about your taxes. It's so much more. It's about how you live, it's how you exist. So for me, when I really do post something, I really got to learn about it. I really got to learn, why is this important to Jeannie Mai Jenkins? Why, if you follow me, why do you need to care about this? And why is this, if it affects me, why is it going to affect you? So I
Right.
think that responsibility as a person who has a social media platform, whatever it may be, whether you tweet, you post on Instagram, you TikTok, whatever it is, if you want to say something, make sure that you're saying it with your chest, in the words of Kevin Hart, like you really saying it, like I'm telling you, not just because I want to say this so that, you know, I'm in with everybody, but it means something to me. And because you're with me and I influence you in some way, I want it to mean something to you too. So hear it from the words of my mouth and see it in my posts. I may not be with you in person, but if you can move that person in some way to feel it, then you've done your job.
Yeah, excellent. No doubt about it. And that kind of authenticity and that genuineness can't be faked.
Mm.
People see through that, they perceive what it is. Again, another reason why Tamika Mallory, whose book we're celebrating tonight, is so important, because that authenticity radiates in the same way that Ella Baker's authenticity radiated, in the same way that Fannie Lou Hamer radiated that authenticity, or Rosa Parks radiated that authenticity, or Malcolm or Martin. People understood that that was genuine, and what you've said is so extremely important. Miss Preciously, you know, as a Black woman, and a Black woman with a following and a platform, um, we see that what Tamika Mallory has done is join a variety of worlds: entertainment, um, activism, the world of, to a certain degree, those religious activists out there, but at the same time, trying to forge connection between disparate communities. Talk to us about the importance for you as a Black woman with a significant platform, with significant visibility, with an ability to shape perception and change minds. Why it's important for Black women in particular, women of color even more broadly, to be visible, to have a say so in how the world is being shaped, especially now when so many critical issues involve the family and the centrality of women to those families.
Well, for me, my entire career has been based on advocacy. You know, like I've also been blessed enough to be a creative person and just love fashion and beauty and what it has to offer. But for me, why I've stayed here is the transformation of imagery. And I know how that affects everything on every level as it pertains to how we're presented, how we're perceived. You know, we've all heard the angry Black woman perception and just boxing you in into some marginalized view that I know transcends just fashion and beauty and TV and film. Is something that I always have at the forefront of every conversation that I've had, that not just being an advocate for body diversity, but I've always talked about being Black. And I graduated from Clark-Atlanta University with a mass media arts degree. And I came to New York in the fashion industry from a fortified, like a different place than most people that I think that I am surrounded by in the industry, that comes from, you know, a deeply proud and active, you know, being from Atlanta and being, you know, having the Black experience there and growing up in that. Everything that I do, it has to radiate that, and it has to be true to me and to how I feel like I can contribute to a more expansive view of Black women. And if that starts by being visually, if, you know, seeing me on a cover of Vogue gets your attention, when you open Vogue, I'm literally like talking about being Black. As not an article you can like find where I'm not just talking about size diversity. I am always talking about the importance of viewing me as an African-American woman that is here for more than just a visual representation of what you think we are. So having a voice for me has always been like a requirement. It was non-negotiable. And I think that the importance of that transcends different industries that also contribute to what it is that we're dealing with socially. And just like even visually seeing a Black person and having that physical fear of, you know, your body or being in danger. And when our bodies are viewed as that and being weaponized, I think that it's important for me to always talk about why I'm here and not just show up and feel that I only have, you know, that bandwidth to just talk about that. For me, it's not an option. And I know that that is important for the work that I'm doing by touching a wide range of women. I have followers that are young girls that want to get into modeling or someone that wants to get into acting. And I just feel like it's really important to always have that as a representation of who I am as a person first, and then how I present myself as a model, an actress, a writer, and so forth. So I believe that the transformation of imagery is a huge part of the movement, and us being at the forefront of different arenas and not just one space. Like, we're so capable and expansive, and I just want that to be something that when you look at me, you know what my voice is behind my image.
Beautiful, beautiful. No, and that transformation of image is critical, because in the day and age in which we live, in this postmodern American culture where image is critical, always it's been said that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Then in this era where images are proliferating, it certainly makes a huge difference in terms of image warfare, because we're the image of Derek Chauvin as an officer and a policeman of the state, and the image of George Floyd being rendered vulnerable beneath the knee of a deadly and now we know murderous cop, is a battle of images. The images of Mr. Brown as a, quote, posthumously dubbed drug dealer who's being drugged through the mud by a system that refuses to see his humanity, versus the images, as you've spoken about, Ms. Lee, where you consciously engage in warfare against the narrowing of our identities and insisting that you can talk about things highly intelligently and be on the cover of Vogue at the same time, talking about image diversity, body diversity, and also brain diversity for that matter as well. That's so very important. Brother Raphael, picking up on what Miss Precious just talked about, you're in the business of images. And Miss Mallory, in her book, speaks about her approach to social media. It's not an uncomplicated arena. And it's one in which, you know, there's been a rapidly evolving consciousness about how to use that social media. I'm of course born before. I'm not a digital native. Back in my day, when they said Facebook, we had to face the book and read it. That's what we had to do, homie. And we and we had to have Twitter because we were a Twitter about what was going on through our excitement. And like Jay-Z said, Instagram didn't mean what y'all think it meant, an instant gram that's about a drug. But anyway, I digress. So the point is, you are in the business of images. Tamika Mallory speaks about, her use of social media, her blowing up in many ways on social media, and struggling with acknowledging the necessity of deploying whatever means are available to us, to her in particular, and then going viral, and then thinking about George Floyd's death and the way in which this plethora of images bombard us in such a powerful fashion. So, speak about the same way that a person appearing before the camera as an artist, a thespian, if we're gonna get, even more technical, um, has a similar kind of effect, a similar kind of persuasion, and a similar kind of power. And just like we saw many of those videos that proliferated in, on social media, in cyberspace, there have been arguments about black and brown and red and yellow and Asian, Pacific Island, African American, indigenous people. There's a constant negotiation of our images in the world. Speak to us about the struggle for control over images that represent us, and at the same time not being able to control how people perceive us to a certain degree, and that puts us in very difficult situations. Talk to us about that.
Oof. Michael, that is a beautiful question. I'm going to do my best to dissect everything that's happening in my brain right now. But, when you say the term imagery of brown, black, native, Asian community, for me, my mind takes me to history. And for me, my mind goes to where can I see us? Because we can see each other all the time on Instagram and Twitter and on social media, correct? And on television. But for me, what has mattered and the way that I have learned to adapt as an immigrant in this country, I came here at 13 years old. The way that I learned to find myself was not necessarily look at media, but in fact in history books. And that was a way too that I learned to honestly to learn English, to pronounce English, to read in English. And what I've come to realize, and I'm not saying this with a position that I'm extremely well versed, that I have degrees and degrees of knowledge, of experience in speaking about this, but just the sheer curiosity of what does it look like in the history books. And the truth is that a lot of the history of the United States comes from a very Eurocentric point of view, an Anglo-Saxon point of view, because you have to ask the question, who is it that's telling the stories? Who is it that's contributing to the history of the United States, to the Black history, to the indigenous history of the United States, to the Asian Latinx history? Majority of these writers are white people. So growing up in the American school system as an immigrant kid, I couldn't help but feel a little bit damaged and feeling like a little bit incapable of just being my true self and believing in my own potential and being courageous and walking with a level of ownership, not only because of the immigrant portion of arriving in a new culture, a new country, but also because of how much has been erased and how much has been lied about of indigenous culture, of Black culture, and so when the truth isn't in history, when humanity isn't in history, when conflict isn't in history, when arguments and treaties and conversations when humans aren't in history, all we learn are facts. And that's what we grew up with. That's why people can't retain anything when we learn about history. Everything is presented as a fact rather than a conversation, rather than two people coming together to find some common ground. And the way that I learned to maneuver through that was to actually step back and find other means to see myself in books, in utilizing my own curiosity to navigate through what does it mean, what is it that we're missing, because I couldn't really explain my own position as an immigrant in this country, because it really just didn't make sense. And I'm going to agree with you in terms of social media. I personally am not really good with social media. I find myself not subscribing to the necessity of posting all the time, keeping up, maintaining upkeeping my presence on social media. But I do find that then more often than not, there are so many things that need to be talked about, so many things that need to be said, so many things that need exposure, because we've been lacking, at least in our American school system. And it's exactly what Jeannie Mai Jenkins talked about. I mean, you have to risk something. You have to risk a part of yourself. You need to identify with the struggles of other minorities, because you find yourself in America being a minority, and you have to realize that we're all under this umbrella. It doesn't matter whether you're Black, Native American, Latinx, and I mean, you're all part of the same minority, which is people of color. Being part of the LGBTQIA plus community as well. You find yourself trying to find yourself in this culture that has been built and has been perpetuated against you, and make you feel like you don't belong, right? So changing this narrative, changing the point of view. What my purpose with social media is not to change anyone's point of view. It is not to sway anyone left or right, up and down. For me, the purpose of social media, for me, because that's how I applied in my life as well, is to grow my awareness. And if I can, if my simple touch of a screen can help you do that, imagine what you can do for yourself when you identify with the struggles of other people, even though you might not look like them. And I think that's the power of social media, and the images that we've seen of George Floyd being kneed on, and these horrific images, it just brings us to a reality that does exist. Mm-hmm. We need to be humble enough to understand that this is not new. Unfortunately, this is not new, and it hasn't been new for such a long time. Understanding the humility and the responsibility that we also hold of being a citizen of the United States, we need to hold ourselves accountable for what we see. It's very easy on an idle Monday. I'm just checking Instagram, and all of a sudden there's a guy kneeing another man's neck. And it's very easy to me just to say, oh man, that sucks. Anyway, continue scrolling. That's easy. That's easy part. And let me share my story. And especially if you have an audience, like all of us, especially if you have an audience, let me just put it on my story. Let me retweet it. Therefore, I did my part. Done. There you go. We're good. We're good. Mm-hmm. You need to risk something. You need to for this movement to last, for this to work, for us to actually create change, you need to risk a part of yourself. And I'm not Black, right? So how do I identify with this? How do I learn from this? Oh, right. I'm a gay immigrant kid who's also faced racism. Racism is racism, right? There's no spectrum of more racism, less racism. It's racism, right? Although different people have different experiences, and different experiences are harsher than others, right? So recognizing what you want out of this, and realize that it's not about you, dude. It's not about you. It's not about your voice. It's not something you can post to get some instant gratification, to receive some messages that, hey, thank you so much for the visibility, whatever. Long term. Tamika speaks it in her own fabulous book about centralized like protesting, like having a purpose, being organized, having an intention, going with the intention, because feelings fluctuate, they come and go. That doesn't last, but the purpose, the knowledge lasts. And when you can do it together, and you can do it with leadership, you can utilize the mediums such as social media, such as if you happen to have an audience, if you're privileged enough to have an audience, a built-in community that's willing to pay to listen to you speak, such as this, they make, you know, fandoms, whatever, people that stan you, let's use these terms, that adore you for you simply being who you are. You have the responsibility, and you need to you need to be humble enough that that's a privilege that not everyone has, right? So and you also need to be honest. You need to be honest about why you do it, what you want, and how you can help other people, because at the end of the day, it's about other people, right? It's not about you. So
Right. No, very powerful. Um, and it reminds us, of course, of the use of language itself, right? Minority as opposed to minoritized, right? We are minoritized. Third world, it's 2/3 of the world, right? The majority, the vast majority of people on this earth happen to look like you and I and the rest of the folk here, which means an artificial division, what they call map making and chartography, the way they draw these maps and the way they carve out space, making us think that people like us are in the minority when indeed the majority of folk all over the world struggling with their backs against the wall, with resources being plundered from them. And as Tamika writes about in this book, because she says it's our book, and being our book, we have to meet people where they are in the languages that they speak, which is again the reason I noted at the beginning, having both Angela Davis and Cardi B is not simply a generational difference, right? A seasoned senior citizen of the struggle, so to speak, along with Cardi B, who speaks her mind, who doesn't mind using her platform to speak up and to speak out. And looking at Tamika Mallory, who generationally in a younger age cohort, and yet has tapped into some of the most extraordinary wisdom and insight and courage from her elders, but then used it in an updated fashion, so to speak, like Jesus meeting the woman at the well. If y'all don't mind me using a biblical metaphor, since I'm a Baptist preacher, but Jesus meets the woman at the well. He don't engage in no serious theological conversation about metanoia and changing yourself in the Greek term to conversion. He say, I'm thirsty, right? Like so many people were thirsty when Ron Isley showed up with the beard. Thirsty. Jesus said, I'm thirsty. I need a drink of water. So he met her at the level of a bucket and a glass of water, so to speak, and from there built out. So what I see Tamika Mallory doing in State of Emergency, and she speaks about this in a collectivist sense, which is so extremely important to share that, because you can't move the people if they can't understand what you're saying. I remember Jesse Jackson said to me one time, he said, if you say something I can't understand, that's a failure of your education, not mine. Right? So you got to translate. You got to be able to take what is extremely important. And she talks about in here people not having a baseline of knowledge. So you gotta slow walk people, as the old folk used to say. You got to bring them up to speed. And when I see people getting all arrogant about using terms that they learned yesterday, now come on, dog. When were we talking about cisgender? Ain't nobody 5 years ago, and it's important, right? Demi Lovato coming out today as non-binary. We didn't non-binary. What the hell is that? We didn't know. So people evolve. Your wokeness tracks what becomes available to you as an ideal in the culture. So I say all that to say we have to be patient, rhetorically, conceptually, philosophically patient with folk to bring them along, because the way you reach out to people can make all the difference in whether or not they want to be invested in a movement that can shape their lives. Now, I'm going to have one more round robin I got to bring in. After I talk to y'all one more time, I got to bring in Tamika Mallory. I know she's supposed to be sitting on the side, chilling out, but we got to hear from the queen of social activism, this young queen of social activism. But I want to go back to Jeannie Mai Jenkins. I love just saying your entire name there. So You know, when you think about the fact that Raphael was speaking about that, the George Floyd video, tell us what you found. I just want to ask each of you. Raphael's spoken about it, but I want to ask you and Precious what you felt when you saw that, right? What was the register on your body? How did the trauma actually awaken or sicken you? And what did it signify to you about where this nation is right now after so many years of struggle for social justice?
For me, I I can honestly say that I'm still horror stricken
Mhm.
by I can actually bring myself to the emotion I felt when I first saw it. I just was so shocked. I've never seen an actual slow, drawn out murder in front of my very eyes where you keep blinking, wondering if what you're seeing is real.
Mhm.
And I'll never forget the terror and the screams of the people recording as they didn't know what to do. And I can see the pulsing of Mr. Floyd's neck and his words as he was crying out for anything and God to listen, and obviously his mother. And these things are they have haunted me for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
And I've never experienced such, I don't even know the range of emotion to describe the fury and the disgust when I
Mhm.
was watching Officer Chow stand right by there. For me, that was the first thing that my eye went to. As an Asian American woman, I looked at him and I can see every frame of his, I can see every frame of him telling the onlookers to step back on the curb, and his back facing Mr. Floyd, and just I remember everything, all of
Mhm.
it. Um, that I don't think will ever become something I can talk about without getting an insane rush of an accumulation of just so much disappointment and pain and anger and even worse, especially for me being, I consider myself pretty privileged, you know? I mean, I'm sitting up here with you guys. I'm considered a celebrity. I'm considered like I have a voice, all these things, but there's not a damn thing I could do for that situation.
Mhm.
I understand my power to vote. I understand my things that I could do today, but wait, but from that moment all the way, like picturing myself there, that's the hardest part. Like what would I have done that would have been different from what everybody was trying to do?
Mhm.
And the scary part is today, I still don't know what my rights are if I were to witness something like that to happen.
Mhm.
I've been in situations where my friends have gotten arrested and I've recorded, and cops have told me to put my phone down in a very menacing way with a threat to be arrested. And I know every state law is different, but what is the overall what rule for us so that we know what we can do? How do we intervene when we see justice not being served, when we see cops not being cops or protected? What when I picture myself in every situation, you know, even the cars that we're driving by, I really I shake because I don't know what I would do. I'm just filled with anger, and we know that anger is not going to help if you don't, if you can't strategize and you know what your rights are. And so I'm sickened all the way until the day that Derek Chauvin's um, verdict came out, because I'm disgusted with why me as an American citizen actually born here with the power to vote and the power to have a voice and all these other privileges I think I have, that I was actually sitting there on bated breath watching whether or not this man was going to be convicted of what he deserved.
Mhm.
That's
That's right.
absolutely insane to me. Um, So those are the lingering questions that I have when you ask me my reactions from it. I'm still
Yeah.
processing it now, and I will say that talking about it, like here with people, whether it's on a forum like this or with my own individual friends and family, that is something I'll never stop talking about, because listening to people and actually talking to people, and obviously State of Emergency, the book, helps me. Even just learning what an accomplice is, these things, they actually have become therapy to help me to process that frozen terror that I felt when I watched the video, to when I watched the trial, to when I walk around now. The other day, just literally 3 days ago, Jeezy and I, we were driving in a car and he got pulled over. I he saw the lights in the back and he said, "Babe, I'm getting pulled over." And immediately I was on the gram. I fumbled for my phone. I turned on the camera. I put it up and I was like, okay, how do I catch it so that the whole time I was thinking, catch what's about to happen.
Right.
That's the first thing I was thinking. I wasn't thinking like I used to drive, and I used to think, what did I do wrong? Was I speeding? No, it was a totally different terror. My entire chest was sweating. I was scared. I was talking to him like, please don't do anything. Calm down. Like, don't, but those things are not things that you have to tell somebody. And especially a Black man. It's just,
Right.
I'm still just learning my way through this whole thing.
Right. No, that's very powerful. And Jeezy, who's brilliantly written about, being stopped by cops, think about "Don't Get Caught," right? One of
Yeah.
his joints. Right? We could have a Jeezy archive here to speak to that. But no, that's so very poignant, very powerful. And the reason state of emergency is so important is because it helps us to navigate that feeling of helplessness. How do you translate that sense of not knowing? Because the state depends upon the collective ignorance of the people to continue to impose such brutality, unwarranted hostility against the very people that should be protected. So Mitch McConnell doesn't want a bipartisan committee on January 6th because they don't want to look seriously into the realm of that, you know, misled, immoral, horrible event. But thank God, state of emergency is breaking it down. Let me go to Miss Precious Lee right quick. Then we're going to bring in the great Tamika Mallory. Miss Lee, tell us about your experience seeing it, feeling it, witnessing what happened, and your emotional response to that.
Well, when I saw it, I instantly saw my Uncle Bryant, my Uncle Bruce, my Uncle Ernie, my brother Harry. I thought of ex-boyfriends. It was a big Black man on the ground with a white man on top of him that obviously was just wrong on every level in every timeline. But for me, it went right back to 1825. I'm like, this is 2020 and this is actually happening. And it feels like 1825. And the helplessness in seeing that, and seeing even the color of his skin being so similar to literally my uncle's, and knowing that that could have very well been so many different people that I know and have been in contact with, and knowing how helpless that he must have felt in that moment, and just seeing and knowing how helpless I felt in that moment instantly ignited pain. But then it went into, I can't even say anger, because it's not even anger. I think the emotion is more of, I just was like, are you really serious? Is this really happening right now? After all we've been through and all we've contributed, this is what's happening. And the very first thing I believe I posted on my timeline, which is still there, which is a video of Fannie Lou Hamer when she says that America has been built on the backs of Black people. And that entire institution that this country was founded on, and the reason why we even have an economy, is because of our ancestors. And to see that it's 2020 and I am, I've reached so many goals. I'm in the middle of reaching many goals and the world is expanding, but then you look it right in its ugly face, and it just felt like the truth of this country. It almost felt like, when I say 1825, it took me back to that timeline, because that is what the foundation of this like place that we are like citizens at. And that I just felt like I was so overwhelmed at how the audacity of someone that is being paid by our tax dollars would feel that they had that right. And then I instantly started thinking about, you know, the negative interactions I've had with cops in general, and just the superiority and this feeling of this intimidating physical sense, and like the, you know, the idea of taking a power from a person and just being powerless when I know how powerful we are innately. It was something that felt horrific, and it ignited something in me, and it literally like just makes you want to go reach for your tennis shoes and get ready. Like, where are we going? Like, what's the first stop? And for that to be happening in a pandemic too, you know, I'm thinking about like, I want to go see my parents and I don't want to be like, it was so many different choices that an activist had to make at that time to contribute to the greater good of it. And that was hard, and it's so hard and mentally and physically taxing on Black people that I know you've seen it in a quote and you've scrolled past people saying that, but I don't think people understand the visceral effect that it takes on someone to see someone that they know they could very well be in their same position and be so dehumanized. It's something that I'll never get over. And I know that it was not rare. And that's another thing. It was kind of like an anger of like, this is being recorded right now. The first time I ever did a march, Trayvon Martin, I literally just got up and put on my shoes, and I was living in Harlem at the time, and walked outside. And that was kind of the same reaction that I had. It's like, we have to put our feet on the ground. And it is, everybody that I'm connected to, what you doing, what y'all doing, like who I've been making money for, what are y'all doing? Because it's like, what's the timeline of what it is that you feel like you need to get yourself together and contribute to diminishing this, and, you know, us not being able to see this anymore. I need everybody hands on deck. I mean, everybody has their different levels that they contribute, but my instant reaction was like, I gotta go find my shoes, and I gotta figure out like, nah, this just can't happen. And I think a lot of Black people saw the connectivity to him and could see like a family member, someone close to them, or just them in general, and see how connected they were to what we were saying. And I found a lot of support in watching videos like the Fannie Lou Hamer video, and having support like people like Tamika and different people at the forefront, at the front lines, and reading. Like, you'll listen to speeches, but like, when's the last time you read the I Have a Dream speech? It's just like so many different ways of reconnecting to like, we are not helpless. We have always been resilient and powerful. The fact that I'm even here looking at this phone on Instagram and being able to do that is just, I know how capable we are as a people, and having to emotionally go through that process every time you see one of these images is something that we just, you know, we're enduring. And I think we do it with grace, but I also know how taxing and heavy it is on our bodies and our minds and our spirits. And I deal with it every day.
Yeah. No, so powerful, so poignant, and ultimately so remarkably insightful, and a perfect setup for Tamika Mallory to come in. Grab your shoes, because Tamika Mallory is used to people grabbing their shoes and then coming with her. And I cannot believe we are out of time. My Lord, we need like 5 hours. This is Tamika Mallory, y'all. We need 5 hours to be able to deconstruct what she did. Because trust me, y'all need to go get this book. It's brilliantly written. It's a beautiful weaving together of both memoir and autobiography. If you want to know how Tamika Mallory got it, she ain't just got up one day. She comes out of a tradition. She comes out of an evolving consciousness, of a revolutionary background, of a fearless and courageous engagement with people. We're going to hear from her now, but a remarkable book, as our eloquent statesmen and women have testified to tonight, in their aesthetic realm and in their artistic engagement, and what they do with both their brains and their bodies. This woman has put it on the line, and it's good that a woman of her character, of her commitment, and of her courage is being recognized, because so often the women, especially who do the work, are rendered marginal. But in the same way that Martin Luther King Jr. came to our consciousness with the bus boycott, Then, of course, the speech on the March on Washington. This speech, termed the state of emergency, brought to an even broader world one of the most remarkable and inspiring leaders that we have in our era, and we are blessed to have her here tonight. We're blessed to have her in our lives. So I want to, for the last minute or so, all right, we might squeeze in even a little bit more. I want to hear from Tamika Mallory herself to talk to us about where she is, how you go get your shoes, how people who don't know what to do can leverage that. And when they see the trauma, the pain, and the heartbreak that, as Miss Precious said, is visceral, and as Jeannie Mai said, will remain with her for the rest of her life. And as Raphael said, the incredible the ways in which all of us as people of color have to grapple with this reality. Put a bow on it for us, Reverend Dr. Professor, writer Tamika Mallory, and give us a sense of why this book is critical as a tool for answering those kinds of questions.
Thank you, Doc. I appreciate you so much. I love you. You know that. You certainly are one of my leaders, and much of the content that is in my book is not new. It's things that I've heard you talk about. I've heard other leaders talking about, and people who are on the ground. And I just tried to say it in my way. And I want to thank Jeannie and Precious and Raphael for being with me this evening and for coming together for an incredible virtual tour that we've been having. And I know, I recognize that the nature of it being virtual has given us so much opportunity to have so many people get involved and to be a part of this dialogue. So much has been said this evening. And I think if there was one thing, I know we have a short amount of time, but if there's one thing that I really want to sort of hone in on, it is this idea of the forward, as you mentioned, and why I was so intentional about bringing Cardi and Dr. Davis together. It was not just because I fangirl over both of them. It was not just because on any given day, I feel like we can twerk and work at the same time. And by the way, Jeannie, I said that on the reel, and it obviously made people feel really excited because I got a lot of feedback from it. But I think it's true. It's our authentic selves. We want to have a good time. We want to be a part of our culture. But at the same time, we want to be 10 toes down in this work, fighting for our people. And you know, I chose the two of them because I wanted to make sure that the material in State of Emergency was exactly what you said, Doc, that it would be welcoming to the person who might be on a street corner, the young lady who might be in a dance club, maybe she's a stripper, you know, and also she's going to school in the daytime. I wanted a pastor and a guy who might be a janitor or a mother and her teenage son, all of them to be able to read this material. I wanted white women to be able to pick this book up and say, wow, I do have some work to do if they haven't begun the process of looking at themselves and knowing that at times Black women and women of color who are in close proximity to white women are harmed. And I wanted to make sure that the content in this book would be something that's diverse. And it was difficult because, you know, you want to write for a particular audience. Everyone asked me at the beginning when I first started this book, who are you writing to? Who are you writing to? But it could potentially be, I don't know, you know, God willing, I'll live a long life, but it could be the only opportunity that I have to put my thoughts down in writing. And I wanted to make sure that it was something that everyone could pick up and find themselves and figure out how to start or how to continue. What's the inspiration for continuing on the path that we're on? You know, you, Jeannie, said something that was so powerful tonight. Everyone said really incredible things. And hopefully the bookstore will allow us to just have one more second, as you said. Tattered, please hold on for us 1 minute. But, you know, you said that watching the Asian man stand there and do nothing was probably what impacted you the most. And I'm going to tell you that saying that tonight lets me know that you really are doing the work, that you really are, you get it. You understand that while there was a lot happening, knowing that there's work to do within your own community is what actually resonated with me the most, because we need people, and particularly officers, where everyone says, you know, they're not all bad, they're good cops. Well, then those good cops that day should have gotten involved. They should have protected George Floyd. And too many people stand by on their jobs, in the human resources department, in stores, in schools. Too many people stand by and watch others harmed, and they do nothing. And if there's anything that you can take from state of emergency and from what has been said tonight, get your shoes. To Precious's point, get out there, find a way to stand in the gap, because, you know, Raphael, your point is so poignant when you say that all of us are hurting in some way. It may just look different for different communities, but at the end of the day, if we don't address the needs of the most marginalized people in this nation, we will never be whole. We will never heal. And I believe that Black folks are certainly at the root of what is the most oppressive and abusive experience that America is responsible for. And if we don't all look at the experience of not just George Floyd, but Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, even Ma'Khia Bryant, a 16-year-old who, while she may have had a knife, there are social workers telling me every day, there are teachers saying, I have taken knives out of young girls' hands, I've taken knives out of kids' hands, I have protected my students. And why is it that police officers are not trained with the same love and responsibility for life, and particularly for Black life, as they are? So there's so much work to be done. And there's a way that each and every one of us can get involved and do that work. My voice is a small contribution, but I suggest that people who are listening tonight take the time to not just listen to Tamika Mallory, but to listen to Mike Warwick Dyson and to everyone else who's out here. We might not be perfect in the way in which we're telling the story and the way in which we're organizing, but we're here and we're doing something. And I think there is a way for you to find the seasoning that works right for you. But doing nothing, to my brother, Myson Lennon, you know, he says all the time in one of his strong pieces, his strong spoken words, that I don't have the right to do nothing. Nothing is not acceptable. So thank you all so much. Thank you for purchasing your tickets and for coming and being a part of this incredible virtual tour.
All right, there it is. The woman herself. I know I'm gonna give it over to Sister McKaylee, but I gotta say, I'm so proud of Tamika Mallory. I love her. I adore her. I follow her. She is my leader because she has paid the cost to be a leader. And she has paid it in her body. She's paid it in her mind. She's paid it in her reputation. She's paid it in the commitment she's made and the arrows that have been slung against her. And regardless of that, or as the brothers and sisters say, irregardless of what she has had to confront, she has stood tall. So I want to thank her for her model leadership and for her commitment and for this beautiful book. Who knew? She can write too. Man, if you're already salty at her.
You said I'm a professor. I'm like, I haven't conquered that yet, but I certainly am now an author. And so it's great. And you know what? I just want to make sure to say to Tattered Cover Bookstore, thank you so much for carrying State of Emergency and for partnering on this event tonight. It really means a lot to me.
Well, thank you all for being here. I want to do very, very quickly, give each of our guests the opportunity to remind people who they are, where they can find them online. So before we close out tonight, I'm just going to go quick round robin. Jeannie, you're first on my screen here.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for having me. I'm Jeannie Mai Jenkins. You can find me probably on Instagram, is most of the time you're going to catch me in the DMs there. So hit me up at the Jeannie Mai, and I also have a YouTube called Hello Hane. You can check me out there too.
And Miss Precious Lee. Oh, Precious, you're muted.
Can you hear me? Sorry. Thank you so much for having me. Such an honor. Couldn't be doing anything more amazing. I can be found on Instagram as well, Precious Lee, XOXO. Thank you.
Mr. Silva.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you for providing this platform so we can all speak on our experiences, and also thank Tamika for providing us with this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful book and guide. You guys can find me on Twitter and on Instagram at @actuallyrafa.
Mr. Dyson.
Yes, ma'am. Well, it's an honor to be here. You can find me in your local church trying to throw down, in your local school trying to lecture. It's what I do. I'm at Vanderbilt now, so I'm doing that. Hopefully, I'll be on the reel with my next book. I'm gonna be like Tamika Mallory when I grow up. But on Twitter, Michael E. Dyson. But on Instagram and Facebook, Michael Eric Dyson. Holla at your boy. I'm right there.
And Miss Mallory.
Yes, you can go to TamikaDMallory.com. That's TamikaDMallory.com for more information about the rest of the virtual tour. And in June, we're going to be making an announcement about some in-person events that will be happening across the country. So TamikaDMallory.com, get your tickets. You can get a book. Some of them are signed, and you will be able to be a part of the incredible experience. And of course, if you're looking to find out more about my work, my everyday work that we do across this country, you can go to untilfreedom.com. That's untilfreedom.com.
And we're Tattered Cover Bookstore in Denver, Colorado. Just to let everybody know, your copies of State of Emergency will be mailed out soon as possible. And we've got signed book plates for you as well that we'll be mailing out. Thank you to this panel. Thank you for joining us this evening. And thank you for supporting your local independent bookstore. Stay safe, everybody. Happy reading. Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.